Hey, my name is Noah. I'm 29. Until 2 months ago, I was just the guy who delivered groceries to rich people's houses in the hills. Then, one October night, I was standing on a glass doorstep, rain sheeting down my back, when this married woman looked at the storm behind me and whispered, "You can stay for the night. It's dangerous out there." The warm air from inside carried the scent of lemon cleaner and something else, something that smelled like safety I'd never known I was missing. 6 weeks later, at 2:07 a.m., she'd order the same three items that started it all: green tea, two lemons, and matches. But that first night, when the power died and we sat across from each other by candlelight, she said something that still keeps me awake. "I've been writing letters to no one about loneliness I can't name. If you're watching this right now, tell me where you're from in the comments. Because I still don't know if what we did was wrong. I was 29 and driving groceries through rain that turned roads into rivers. The windshield wipers fought a losing battle. Water sheeted down like the sky had cracked open. My phone buzzed with alerts about bridge closures and flash floods. Tom, my dispatcher, kept sending updates. Stay safe. Finish what you can. Get home. I should have turned around. But Elena Whitmore had ordered the usual Tuesday delivery to 47 Hillcrest Court, and I needed every run I could get. Mom's medication wasn't getting cheaper, and my van payment was due Thursday. So I drove up into the hills where the rich people lived. The cul-de-sac sat above the creek like it was watching the water rise. Big houses with perfect lawns and gates that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. Elena's place was all glass and stone, modern lines that made you feel small just looking at them. I parked as close as I could get, double bagged her groceries, and made a run for the door. The covered porch saved me from the worst of it, but I was already soaked through. My jacket dripped steadily onto the stone. I pressed the bell and waited, watching the rain come down sideways. The door opened, and there she was. Elena Whitmore was 44 and beautiful in a way that made you forget to breathe for a second. Not magazine beautiful, real beautiful, the kind that lived in her eyes and the careful way she held herself. Dark hair pulled back, soft sweater, bare feet. She always seemed like she was listening to something the rest of us couldn't hear. "Noah," she said, stepping back, "you're soaked." The warm air from inside carried the scent of lemon cleaner and something else, something that smelled like safety. "Sorry about the water," I said, trying not to drip on her threshold. "Got the Tuesday order." She reached for the bags and our fingers brushed for half a second. Her hands were warm and soft. Mine were cold and rough from loading boxes all day. "The creek's rising fast," she said, glancing past me toward the road. "I saw the alert about the bridge." I nodded. "Tom says don't take the detours. Too risky." Behind her, a golden retriever appeared. Marlowe. Old dog with gentle eyes and a tail that moved like he was always happy to see whoever showed up. He pushed his nose toward my hand. "Hey, boy," I whispered, letting him sniff my knuckles. Elena was checking her phone, frowning at the radar. Red and orange patches covered half the county, more coming in from the west. She looked up at me. Really looked, like she was seeing something she hadn't noticed before. "You can stay for the night," she said quietly. "It's dangerous out there." Thunder rolled overhead, shaking the windows. The rain turned harder, drumming against the glass like it had something urgent to say. I stood there for a long moment, water still dripping from my jacket. This wasn't how things went. I delivered groceries. I said thank you. I left. But the storm was getting worse, and the bridge was probably underwater by now. I I started just until morning, she said, when the alerts change. Lightning lit up the sky behind me. Elena stepped aside, and I found myself walking into her house for the first time. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing out the storm. The inside of Elena's house was exactly what you'd expect and nothing like I'd imagined. Open kitchen with a long island, High ceilings, everything clean and perfect, but somehow empty too, like a magazine photo where the people had just stepped out of frame. I set the grocery bags on the counter, careful not to get water on the stone. Sorry about the mess, I said, meaning my wet clothes and muddy shoes. Don't worry about it. Elena moved around me to unpack the bags. Milk, bread, pasta, the fancy kind of tea that came in tins. I'll get a towel. My phone buzzed, then hers. The gate camera had pinged an alert. Someone was calling. Elena's face went still when she saw the name on the screen. Greg. My husband, she said like she needed to explain. He's in Denver for work. She answered the FaceTime call, turning the phone so I was mostly out of frame. Hey, Greg's voice came through, tinny and distant. Everything okay? Got an alert from the gate camera. Elena glanced at me, something quick and careful passing across her face. There's a handyman here, she said smoothly, checking the breakers before the power goes out. I looked around, confused for a second until Elena nodded toward a small toolbox on the counter. I picked it up, lifting it into the frame where Greg could see. Smart thinking, he said. This storm looks nasty. I'm stuck here until Thursday at least. Meeting got extended. I'll be fine, Elena said. Marlo's here, and Mrs. Patel has her generator going if we need anything. Good. Don't take any risks. And hey, Greg paused. Saw in the HOA chat that someone reported a delivery van at the gate. Just make sure they're legit, okay? Of course, Elena said. I always check. The power flickered. Once, twice. Looks like I better let you go, Greg said. Generator test time. Love you. Love you too. The call ended. Elena set her phone down and stared at it for a long moment. I put the toolbox back where I'd found it. Neither of us said anything about the lie, about how easily it had come, or how naturally I'd played along. Outside, the rain kept falling. Elena heated soup from a can while I sat at the far end of the kitchen island. The kettle whistled on the stove. Marlo settled beside my chair, his weight warm against my leg. We didn't talk much, just small things. How the creek always flooded first. How the bridge would probably stay closed until morning. How her neighbor, Mrs. Patel, was the kind of person who had 3 generators and enough canned goods to survive the apocalypse. She's good to have around, Elena said, ladling soup into bowls. Keeps an eye on everything. The HOA type? Board member, but she means well. Elena handed me a spoon, and our fingers grazed again. Neither of us pulled away immediately. She just likes to know who comes and goes. I thought about Greg's comment, about someone reporting my van. Should I move it? I asked. If it's causing problems? No. Elena sat across from me. You're here because of the storm. That's all. But the way she said it made me think there was more to it, something she wasn't ready to name yet. We ate in comfortable quiet. The soup was good, simple and warm and exactly what the night needed. Marlo's tail thumped occasionally against the floor. The rain drummed steady on the roof. Then, the power died. The lights went out all at once. The refrigerator hummed to a stop. The kettle's whistle faded to nothing. We sat in the sudden dark, listening to the silence where electricity used to be. Well, Elena said, there's that. Elena found flashlights in a drawer. Good ones, not the cheap kind that died when you needed them most. She handed me one, and the beam trembled slightly against the steel refrigerator. Let me check the breakers, I said. Garage is through there. She pointed toward a door off the kitchen. The garage smelled like car wax and lawnmower gas, clean, organized, tools hanging in perfect rows. The breaker box was easy to find, but flipping switches didn't help. The outage was bigger than just her house. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom. Bridge closed. Don't attempt detours. Creeks over the road. I showed Elena the message when I came back inside. Looks like you're stuck with me, I said. She was lighting candles now, moving around the kitchen with practiced ease. The warm light made everything softer, less perfect, more real. There's a guest room upstairs, she said, or the couch is comfortable if you prefer. Couch is fine. I wasn't about to impose more than I already was. I'll be gone first thing in the morning. Elena nodded, but something in her expression suggested she wasn't quite ready for morning yet. We checked the house together, made sure windows were latched, found extra blankets. She offered me a dry towel and an old sweatshirt that smelled like fabric softener and something else, something that might have been her. It's my husband's, she said, watching me hesitate, but he's got dozens. The sweatshirt was soft and expensive, the kind of thing I'd never buy for myself. I changed in the powder room, hanging my wet shirt over the towel bar. When I came back out, Elena was standing by the big window, looking out at the storm. The glass reflected our candlelit kitchen back at us. Two people who shouldn't have been standing in the same room, learning what each other looked like in the half dark. Across the street, a silhouette moved past Mrs. Patel's window. Then, the generator hummed louder, and her house blazed with artificial light. She'll sleep better with that running, Elena said. What about you? I asked. Do you sleep better when it's quiet? She turned to look at me then, really look, like she was trying to decide something. I don't sleep much anyway, she said finally. Long weeks. Greg travels a lot. There was something in her voice, not complaint exactly, just acknowledgement of a truth that lived in the spaces between words. The rain intensified, drumming harder against the roof. Lightning flickered, and thunder followed close behind. We stood there listening, aware of each other in ways that felt dangerous and necessary at the same time. Later, with the candles burning low, Elena brought out an old tin. Tea, she said, setting it on the counter, if you want some. But there was another tin beside it, smaller, older. What's that one? Elena hesitated. Letters? Letters? Things I write when I can't sleep, when the house gets too quiet. She touched the edge of the tin but didn't open it. I never send them. Just thoughts that need somewhere to go. I understood that. The need to put words somewhere when they got too heavy to carry alone. To who? I asked. No one, she said. Everyone, myself mostly. The kettle whistled again. She'd refilled it and set it on the gas stove. The sound cut through the quiet like a gentle alarm. Elena made tea in 2 cups. Real tea, not bags. The kind that required steeping and patience. She moved with careful grace, like someone who had learned to make rituals out of ordinary things. Lemon? She asked. Please. She cut fresh slices, and the citrus scent mixed with the candle wax and storm air coming through the vents. The smell of a night that would stay with you long after it ended. We sat at the island again, tea warm between our hands. Marlowe had found his way to my side of the kitchen, his head resting against my thigh. He likes you, Elena said. Dogs usually do. They're good judges. Better than people sometimes. Lightning flashed again, closer now. In the brief white light, I saw Elena's face clearly. The careful way she held herself, the loneliness she tried to keep hidden. Can I ask you something? She said. Sure. Why do you do this job? Deliveries, I mean. I thought about how to answer that. The real reasons and the safe ones. Flexible schedule, I said. Good for taking care of my mom. She needs help with things. Elena nodded like she understood help meaning more than I was saying. That's good of you. She did the same for me when I needed it. We drank our tea in comfortable quiet. The storm raged outside, but inside felt separate, protected, like we'd found a pocket of calm in all the chaos. What about you? I asked. What do you do when you're not managing houses? Elena smiled, a small, real smile. I used to teach elementary school before Greg's career took off and we moved here. Do you miss it? Every day. The honesty in her voice surprised us both, like she hadn't meant to say something so true. My phone buzzed. Elena's too. Storm alerts updating, getting worse instead of better. Looks like a long night, she said. Looks like it, but neither of us moved to end the conversation. Around midnight, Elena showed me where everything was. Extra blankets in the hall closet, bathroom down the hall, guest towels if I needed them. I'll probably be up for a while, she said. I don't sleep well during storms. The thunder? The quiet between the thunder. I knew what she meant. Sometimes silence was louder than noise. The couch was more comfortable than I'd expected. Leather, but the good kind that got softer with age. Elena had left pillows and a thick comforter that smelled faintly of lavender. Marlowe settled on the floor beside me, his breathing steady and calm. I lay in the dark, listening to the house, the rain on the roof, the wind in the eaves. Elena moving around upstairs, footsteps soft but restless. At some point, I heard her come back downstairs, saw the warm glow of a single candle moving through the kitchen. She was quiet, trying not to wake me. I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep, but I was aware of her presence in ways that made my chest tight, the soft whisper of her movements, the careful way she opened and closed cabinet doors. The scent of lemon cleaner drifted over. She was cleaning something that probably didn't need cleaning. After a while, the candle went out. Her footsteps moved back upstairs. A door closed softly, but I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the way she'd cut those lemon slices, the careful grace of her hands, the loneliness I recognized because it lived in me too. Outside, the storm kept raging. I woke before dawn to the sound of rain easing to a steady drizzle. My phone showed 5:47 a.m. and a dozen messages from Tom. Updates about road conditions. Bridge inspections scheduled for 7 a.m. Detours opening as floodwaters receded. Should be clear to move by 8. Check in when you're rolling. I sat, up carefully, not wanting to wake Marlowe, but the dog was already alert, tail wagging softly. The house was quiet. No sounds from upstairs. I folded the blanket and arranged the pillows, left everything exactly as I'd found it. Elena had been kind enough to shelter a stranger. The least I could do was not leave a mess. In the powder room, I changed back into my own shirt. It was still damp but serviceable. I left the borrowed sweatshirt folded on the counter. When I came out, Elena was in the kitchen. She was dressed for the day. Jeans, soft sweater, hair pulled back, like she'd been up for a while. Coffee was brewing on the gas stove, filling the space with rich, warm scent. "Morning," she said. "Coffee? That'd be great." She poured 2 cups. No cream, but she had sugar in a small ceramic bowl. Real sugar, not packets. "Roads clearing?" she asked. "Tom says by 8. I showed her the messages. "Bridge inspection at 7. Elena nodded, sipping her coffee. "Good." But something in her voice suggested good was complicated. We stood at the island, drinking coffee in the gray morning light. The storm had passed, leaving everything washed and clean. Water still dripped from the eaves, but the urgent drumming had stopped. "Thank you," I said. "For last night, for what? Letting me stay, the tea, everything." Elena looked at me over the rim of her coffee cup. "Thank you for fixing my breaker." It took me a second to remember the lie she'd told Greg, the way I'd played along without thinking. "Right," I said. "The breaker." Neither of us mentioned that I'd never touched the breaker box, that the power had come back on its own somewhere around 3 a.m., that we'd both heard the refrigerator hum back to life and pretended we were still asleep. My phone buzzed. "Tom, bridge inspection done. You're good to go." "That's me," I said, setting down the empty coffee cup. Elena walked me to the door. Marlowe followed, tail wagging like he thought this was all a grand adventure. The morning air was cool and clean. The street gleamed with puddles that reflected the clearing sky. Mrs. Patel's house showed signs of life. Lights in the kitchen, generator silent now that power had returned. My van sat exactly where I'd left it, looking like it had survived the apocalypse. "Drive careful," Elena said. "Always do." I was halfway to the van when she called my name. "Noah?" I turned back. She was standing in the doorway, framed by the warm light from inside. "If you're ever in the neighborhood," she started, then stopped. "I mean, for deliveries, regular runs." "Tuesdays and Fridays," I said. "Usually around 4." She nodded. "Good to know." I got in the van and started the engine. Elena was still standing in the doorway when I pulled away, Marlowe beside her, both of them watching me leave. In my rearview mirror, I saw her close the door, saw the porch light go out, but I kept the image of her standing there, framed by warmth and safety, long after I turned onto the main road and headed back to the real world. The next few days passed in normal routine. Deliveries, gas station coffee, Tom's endless stream of route optimizations, my mom's twice weekly check ins, making sure I was eating enough and getting sleep. But the routine felt different now, like I was going through the motions of a life that didn't quite fit anymore. I found myself thinking about Elena's kitchen island, the way candlelight had made everything soft and warm, the careful grace of her movements, the loneliness I'd recognized because it lived in me too. Thursday afternoon, I was restocking supplies when Tom pulled me aside. "That storm run you did Tuesday," he said. "Everything go okay?" "Fine. Why?" "Got a call from someone in that neighborhood. Complaint about a van parked overnight." My stomach dropped. "What kind of complaint?" "Nothing specific. Just someone asking questions. Wanted to know if we had drivers working overnight shifts." Tom studied my face. "I told them no, but that storm runs sometimes take longer than usual." "Did they say who called?" "No, but I got the impression it was someone official. HOA type." Tom shrugged. "Probably nothing. Rich people just like to keep track of things." I nodded, but my chest felt tight. Mrs. Patel. Had to be. Elena had mentioned she liked to know who came and went. "Anyway," Tom continued, "just keep your nose clean for a while. One complaint doesn't matter, but if it turns into a pattern, it won't," I said. But that afternoon, driving past the turn that led to Elena's neighborhood, I felt the weight of invisible eyes, people watching, keeping track, making sure strangers knew their place. Friday came, Elena's regular delivery day. I loaded her usual order into the van and drove the familiar route up into the hills. But this time, everything felt different. The perfect lawns looked too perfect. The security cameras felt more obvious. The whole neighborhood had an air of careful surveillance that I'd missed the first time. Mrs. Patel was in her front yard, trimming roses with surgical precision. She looked up when my van passed, watched me turn into Elena's driveway. Elena answered the door in jeans and a pale blue shirt, hair down this time, framing her face in soft waves. "Afternoon," she said, reaching for the grocery bags. "Afternoon." Our fingers brushed when I handed over the bags, but this time it felt different, careful, like we were both aware of windows watching. "Everything okay?" I asked quietly. Elena glanced past me toward Mrs. Patel's house. "Yes, just—" She didn't finish the sentence, but I understood. The storm night had created something between us, something that felt dangerous in daylight, with neighbors watching and husbands calling and normal life pressing in from all sides. "Tuesday run go okay?" she asked. "Long night, but I got home safe." "Good." We stood there for a moment. Two, people saying ordinary things while extraordinary thoughts moved beneath the surface. "Well?" I said finally. See you next week. See you Tuesday. I walked back to the van, aware of Mrs. Patel still watching from across the street, aware of Elena standing in her doorway until I pulled away. But this time, when I looked in the rearview mirror, the door was already closed. The porch light stayed off. That night, I sat in my apartment thinking about boundaries, about the difference between shelter and invitation, about the careful way Elena had said goodbye, like she was closing a door that had never really been open in the first place. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Thank you for Tuesday night. The storm was worse than expected. Drive safe. I stared at the message for a long time. Elena had gotten my number from the delivery app. That took deliberate effort. That meant something. I typed and deleted a dozen responses. Finally settled on, glad I could help. Stay warm. She replied immediately, you too. Then nothing. No follow-up, no explanation, just acknowledgement that Tuesday night had happened and meant something to both of us. I saved her number in my phone but didn't text back. Some conversations were meant to end while they still felt perfect. Outside, it started to rain again. Light drizzle, nothing like the storm that had brought us together. But I found myself listening to it hit the windows, remembering the sound of Elena's footsteps upstairs, the careful way she'd made tea, the loneliness I'd seen in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. Some nights changed everything. Some nights changed nothing. The trick was learning to live in the space between. The complaint came on a Wednesday. Tom called while I was loading the van for afternoon runs. His voice had that careful tone he used when things were about to get complicated. Need you to come in, he said. Now. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in his office above the warehouse, watching him shuffle through paperwork like he was looking for the right way to say something difficult. Got a formal complaint yesterday, he said finally, about the storm run to Hillcrest Court. My chest went tight. What kind of complaint? Violation of company policy. Overnight stay at a client residence without authorization. Tom looked up from the papers. Says you were parked at a customer's house from 7 p.m. Tuesday to 8 a.m. Wednesday. The bridge was flooded. You told me not to attempt detours. I know what I told you. Tom leaned back in his chair. Question is, what happened after you got there? I thought about Elena's kitchen, the candles, the way she'd made tea like it was a sacred ritual, the borrowed sweatshirt that had smelled like safety. I delivered the groceries, I said. Customer offered shelter until the roads cleared. I slept on her couch, left first thing in the morning. That's it? That's it. Tom studied my face for a long moment. Complaint says you were seen entering and exiting the residence multiple times. Says there was evidence of extended personal interaction. My stomach dropped. Evidence? Security cameras, ring doorbells. These neighborhoods have everything wired. Tom tapped the complaint form. Someone took screenshots, timestamps. They did their homework. I thought about Mrs. Patel, her surgical rose trimming, the way she'd watched me drive past. This Mrs. Patel? I asked. Complaints anonymous, but it came through official channels, HOA board to corporate. Tom set the papers down. Look, Noah, I believe you. Storm was nasty, bridge was out, you made the smart call. But perception matters. Company gets nervous when drivers start sleeping at customer houses. So, what happens now? Suspension pending investigation. 3 days, unpaid. I have to interview the customer, verify your story. Tom's expression softened. If it checks out, you're clear. If not, he didn't finish the sentence, didn't need to. I walked out of the office with 3 days to think about how quickly a moment of kindness could turn into a threat. I spent Thursday at home, trying not to think about Elena fielding questions from Tom, trying not to imagine her husband finding out about the complaint, about late night conversations and borrowed sweatshirts and the way we'd both pretended to sleep while the power hummed back to life. My phone stayed quiet. Friday morning, Tom called. "You're clear," he said. "Customer confirmed your story. Said you were professional throughout. Kept to common areas, left at first light." Relief flooded through me. "And the complaint?" "Withdrawn. Complainant contacted the office yesterday, said they'd overreacted. Misunderstood the situation." Tom paused. "Funny thing, though. When I called to schedule the customer interview, she already knew about the complaint, said she'd handle it personally." "Elena. She'd known about the complaint and made it disappear before it could destroy my job." "When do I start back?" "Monday." "But Noah," Tom's voice turned serious, "whatever happened that night, don't let it happen again. Some risks aren't worth taking." Monday came with a new route assignment. Tom had shuffled my deliveries, moving me away from the hills and into the suburban developments on the east side. Safer neighborhoods, less complicated clients. I didn't complain, didn't ask about Elena's regular deliveries. But I thought about her, wondered if she'd requested a different driver or if Tom had just made the call himself. Wondered if she missed the familiar routine of Tuesday and Friday afternoons. Wondered if she thought about storm nights and borrowed time. 2 weeks passed. Normal deliveries to normal people who took their groceries and said thank you and closed their doors without offering shelter from anything at all. I told myself it was better this way. Simpler, safer. I told myself they lot of things. The second storm hit on a Saturday night in October. I was finishing my last run of the week when the alerts started flooding in. Flash flood warnings, bridge closures, the same red and orange radar patterns that had brought Elena and me together 6 weeks ago. But this time I was on the south side of town, nowhere near the hills. This time, I followed protocol. Finished my deliveries and headed straight home while the roads were still passable. Safe, smart, professional. I sat in my apartment listening to rain drum against the windows, thinking about candlelight and tea and the careful way Elena had made ordinary moments feel like grace. My phone buzzed with route updates from Tom, weather alerts from the city, Mom checking in from her apartment across town. At 1:54 a.m., I was still awake, watching lightning flicker through the blinds, when the delivery app pinged with a new order. Green tea, 2 lemons, 1 box of matches, pickup from an all-night market, delivery to 47 Hillcrest Court, surge pricing, double pay for late-night storm runs. I stared at the screen for a full minute. The exact items from our storm night, the exact address where I wasn't supposed to deliver anymore, ordered at 2:07 a.m. by someone who knew exactly what those three things would mean to a driver who'd spent 6 weeks trying to forget the taste of late night tea and the sound of rain on glass. The app auto-assigned the run before I could refuse it. Tom's system didn't care about complicated histories or unspoken boundaries. It just saw a driver willing to work storm nights and a customer paying double to get tea delivered in the middle of a flood. My finger hovered over the decline button, but Elena wouldn't have ordered those specific items unless she meant them as a message, unless she needed me to understand something that couldn't be said in daylight with neighbors watching. I accepted the run. The market was 24-hour but nearly empty, just me and the night clerk and the fluorescent hum of emergency lighting. The tea was exactly where Elena usually found it, the good kind that came in tins. The lemons were perfect, heavy, and bright. The matches were wooden, the kind meant for lighting candles during power outages. I paid with the company card and drove toward the hills through streets that gleamed with fresh rain. The bridge was still open, but I could hear the creek rushing underneath, angry and swollen. Another hour, and the road would be impassable again. Elena's neighborhood was dark except for scattered porch lights and the blue glow of security cameras. Mrs. Patel's house showed no signs of life. no generator, no watching silhouettes. I parked in Elena's driveway and sat for a moment, engine running, windshield wipers fighting the drizzle. Her porch light was on, not bright, but steady, like a signal meant for someone who knew how to read it. I grabbed the small bag and walked to the door. Before I could knock, it opened. Elena stood in the threshold wearing jeans and an oversized cardigan that hung loose around her frame. Hair down, no makeup, she looked younger somehow, more real. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi?" We looked at each other across the space between inside and outside, between safety and storm, between the careful boundaries we'd built and the gravity that kept pulling us back together. "I didn't know how else to say I remembered," she said. "This is enough." Marlowe appeared beside her, tail wagging, pushing his nose toward my hand. Some things didn't change. Dogs still loved without judgment. Rain still fell. Hearts still beat faster when they recognized something they'd been missing. Elena stepped aside, but not far. Not an invitation to come in exactly, more like acknowledgement that some conversations required a threshold to happen on. "The road's okay?" she asked. "For now, bridge is still open. And your job, after the complaint got withdrawn, I'm back to work." I handed her the bag. "Thank you for that." Our fingers met around the paper handles. Neither of us let go immediately. "I didn't want you reduced to a headline," she said. "Some stories deserve to stay private." The rain picked up, drumming louder on the porch roof. Elena glanced toward the street, but Mrs. Patel's windows stayed dark. "How long before the roads flood?" she asked. "Hour? Maybe two?" "And you have other deliveries?" "No. This was the last one." We stood there in the space between question and answer, between what was safe and what was necessary. "I kept the sweatshirt," she said suddenly. "The one you borrowed. I washed it and folded it and meant to leave it on the porch for your next delivery. But then your route changed. You didn't have to. I have it inside, in a bag by the door." She looked up at me. "I could get it." It wasn't really about the sweatshirt. We both knew that. "If you want," I said. Elena disappeared for a moment, leaving me alone with Marlowe and the sound of rain on leaves. When she returned, she was carrying a craft paper bag folded neat at the top. "Thank you," I said, taking it. "It smells like sun now, and fabric softener. Nothing like storm night." "Yes?" We looked at each other in the half-light, remembering things we'd never actually named, the careful way she'd cut lemons, the borrowed warmth of dry clothes, the loneliness that had felt less sharp when shared. "Greg's home more now," she said quietly, "working from the office upstairs, conference calls, video meetings." "That's good." "It is." But her voice suggested good was still complicated. "He asks about delivery schedules sometimes. Wonders why the regular driver changed." "What do you tell him?" "That I requested someone different. Said the old driver was unprofessional." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Elena protecting me by pretending I'd been exactly what I'd tried so hard not to be. Thunder rolled. Overhead, still distant but getting closer. "You should go," she said. "Before the bridge." "Yeah," but neither of us moved. "Elena?" "Yes?" "If you ever need—" I started, then stopped. What was I offering? To risk my job again? To complicate her marriage further? To pretend we were just neighbors instead of two people who'd found something rare and dangerous in the space between lightning strikes? "If the alerts ever look like this again," she said, understanding what I couldn't finish, "order the same three things. I'll know it's you." "I'll only do that if the road's unsafe." She smiled then, small and real. "I know." Marlowe settled on the threshold between us, claiming the space where inside met outside. Elena's hand found his head, fingers gentle in the golden fur. I reached out, almost without thinking, and touched her wrist, just for a second, just long enough to feel her pulse, quick and warm. She didn't pull away. "Drive careful," she whispered. "Always do." Walking back to the van felt like walking away from something I couldn't name. The craft bag with the sweatshirt sat light in my hand, but it carried the weight of everything we weren't saying. I set it on the passenger seat and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, Elena was still standing in the doorway, still watching. The porch light dimmed as I pulled away. Not off exactly, just lower, like a signal that meant, until next time. I drove home through empty streets, thinking about boundaries and mercy and the way some people could change your life just by offering tea in the middle of a storm. The following week brought clear skies and normal routines. Deliveries to suburban families who needed milk and bread and didn't offer anything more complicated than exact change and polite thank yous. I worked earlier shifts now. Tom had adjusted my schedule to help with mom's doctor appointments, and the new timing kept me away from evening runs, away from storm possibilities and late night temptations. Safe, professional. Exactly what I'd told myself I wanted. The craft bag sat on my kitchen counter, unopened. Some gifts were meant to be received rather than examined. Some reminders were too precious to unwrap. Thursday afternoon, Mom called while I was restocking supplies. "You sound different," she said after we'd talked through her medication schedule and next week's grocery needs. "Different how?" "Quieter. Like you're thinking about something you can't solve." Mom had always been good at reading between lines. 29 years of practice had made her an expert in things I didn't say. "Just work stuff," I said. "Work stuff doesn't usually make you sound like you're carrying something heavy." I thought about Elena's careful grace, the way candlelight had made everything soft, the loneliness I'd recognized because it lived in me too. "There's this customer," I said finally. "Ah." Mom's voice warmed with understanding. "The kind that makes you forget to be professional? Something like that? She married? Very. And you're being smart about it?" "Trying to be." Mom was quiet for a moment. "Smart isn't always the same as right," she said finally, "but it's usually safer." "Yeah, just be careful, mijo. Some situations don't have good endings." But that night, staring at the craft bag on my counter, I wondered if good endings were always the point. Maybe some connections were meant to exist in the margins. Maybe mercy was knowing when to let something beautiful stay unfinished. October passed into November. The weather turned cold but stayed clear. No flood warnings, no bridge closures, no 2 a.m. orders for tea and lemons and matches. I developed new routines, earlier shifts, different routes, coffee shops that didn't remind me of borrowed sweatshirts and stormlight, but sometimes, driving past the turn that led to Elena's neighborhood, I'd slow down just enough to remember what it felt like to be needed by someone who understood the weight of careful choices. Some nights, when the wind picked up and rain tapped against my windows, I'd find myself listening for sounds that weren't there: footsteps upstairs, kettle whistles, the gentle jingle of dog tags in quiet hallways. I kept Elena's number saved in my phone but never used it. Some connections were meant to exist in memory rather than ongoing conversation. The craft bag stayed on my counter, unopened. November became December. The holidays brought surge orders and extended hours, families needing last minute ingredients for celebration dinners, old people wanting milk and bread delivered so they didn't have to navigate icy sidewalks. Good work, necessary work, the kind that reminded you why delivering groceries mattered beyond just earning a paycheck. But sometimes, sorting through order lists, I'd see tea and lemons and wonder if Elena still made late night rituals from ordinary ingredients. If she still wrote letters to no one and kept them in old tins. If she still stood by windows during storms, listening to silence between thunder. Christmas week brought the first real snow. big, soft flakes that made the world look gentle and new. I worked long days helping families who'd forgotten cranberries or needed extra butter for holiday baking. Tom had started talking about promoting me to dispatcher, more responsibility, better pay, regular hours that would let me take better care of mom as she got older. Everything was moving in the right direction. Everything felt like settling for safe when what I really wanted was dangerous. New Year's Eve, I was finishing my last delivery of the year when the storm alert started up again. Different than October. This time it was snow mixed with freezing rain. The kind of weather that made roads impassable, not because of flooding, but because of ice that turned highways into skating rinks. I'd learned to be smarter about storm nights. Finished. My run's early, headed home before conditions got dangerous. But at 11:47 p.m., sitting in my apartment watching snow fall past the streetlights, the delivery app pinged. Green tea, 2 lemons, 1 box of matches, 47 Hillcrest Court, New Year's surge pricing, triple pay. I stared at the screen, feeling my heart speed up. Elena, ordering our storm night ritual while the city shut down around ice and snow. This time, I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my keys and drove through empty streets toward the hills, windshield wipers fighting freezing rain that wanted to turn everything crystalline and treacherous. The market was open but nearly abandoned. Same night clerk, same fluorescent hum, same tea and lemons and wooden matches that meant more than the sum of their grocery store parts. Elena's neighborhood looked different under snow, softer, like someone had draped everything in white gauze to make it more dreamlike. Her porch light was on, steady and warm against the winter dark. I parked and walked carefully up the icy driveway, aware that falling would ruin whatever grace this moment was meant to have. The door opened before I reached it. Elena stood backlit by golden interior light, wearing dark jeans and a cream-colored sweater that made her look like something from a winter poem. Her hair was longer now, touching her shoulders. "Hi," she said. "Hi. I wasn't sure you'd come. With the ice, some orders are worth the risk." She smiled, and I realized I'd missed that smile more than I'd let myself admit. "Greg?" I asked. "Conference call with Tokyo. Will be until at least 2. She glanced at her watch. Midnight meeting about year-end reports. The timing wasn't coincidental. Elena had planned this moment when she knew we'd have space to exist without explanations or cover stories. "How long can you stay?" she asked. "As long as the roads allow." She stepped aside, and this time, it felt like a real invitation. Not just shelter from weather, but acknowledgement that some connections deserved more than threshold conversations. I stepped inside, and the door closed behind me, sealing out the winter. The house felt the same but different, warmer somehow, more lived in. There were books on the coffee table now, a throw blanket draped over the back of the couch, small signs that Elena had been spending more time in spaces meant for actual living. Marlowe appeared immediately, tail wagging, pushing against my legs like he'd been waiting for this reunion. "He's missed you," Elena said. "I've missed him too." "Just him?" The question hung in the air between us, honest and dangerous. "Not just him," I said. Elena unpacked the delivery with careful hands, tea in the familiar tin, lemons bright against the dark counter, matches wooden and substantial. "I kept thinking about October," she said, "about boundaries and mercy and how some conversations can only happen during storms." "What kind of conversation did you want to have?" She looked at me across the kitchen island, and I saw something new in her expression. Decision, maybe, or resignation to something she'd been fighting for too long. The kind where we stop pretending this is just about grocery delivery. My chest went tight. "Elena, I know all the reasons this is complicated. I know about your job and my marriage and what people would say if they knew." She leaned against the counter, fingers wrapped around the edge like it was anchoring her. "But I also know that some connections don't ask permission, they just are. The kettle whistled on the stove. Elena had started the water while I was walking to the door, anticipating tea and conversation, and the careful rituals that turned ordinary moments into something sacred. What are you saying? I asked. I'm saying that 6 weeks ago, a storm brought a stranger to my door, and somehow, in one night, that stranger became the person I think about when I can't sleep, when the house gets too quiet, when I'm writing letters to no one about loneliness I can't name. She made tea with the same careful grace I remembered, real tea that required steeping and patience, but this time she moved like someone who'd made a decision rather than someone going through familiar motions. Your letter knew my name, I said. That first night, you said you wrote letters to no one, but you used my name before I gave it to you. Elena paused, tea tin halfway to the counter. You noticed that? I notice everything about you. She looked up, and the honesty in her eyes made my breath catch. I'd been watching you for weeks, she said quietly. Tuesday and Friday deliveries. You were always careful, always professional. But there was something in the way you moved, like you were carrying weight you didn't complain about. She resumed making tea, hands steady despite the confession. I asked myself what kind of person delivers groceries during storms and still says thank you when customers don't tip well. Elena, the answer was someone good, someone worth knowing. She cut fresh lemon slices, and the citrus scent filled the space between us. So, when the storm came and the roads flooded, I saw a chance to find out if good men still existed in the world. And and you stayed on my couch and didn't ask for anything more complicated than tea and dry clothes. She handed me a cup, our fingers meeting around the warm ceramic. You fixed nothing and demanded nothing and left everything exactly as you found it. Except you. Except me. We sat at the island, tea warm between our hands, admitting things that felt dangerous and necessary. What happens now? I asked. I don't know. Elena's voice was honest. Greg's home more, but he's not more present. He works from upstairs and asks about my day, but doesn't really listen to the answers. We have dinner together and watch movies and go through all the motions of marriage without. She paused, searching for words, without touching the places that matter. That's not about me to fix. I know. And I'm not asking you to fix anything. Elena looked at me across the small distance between our chairs. I'm just saying that some people change your life by showing you what you didn't know you were missing. Outside, the snow kept falling, soft and steady and making the world quiet in ways that felt holy. This is dangerous, I said. Yes, for both of us. I know. But you ordered the tea anyway. Elena smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd seen in months. Some risks are worth taking, she said, even if they don't have good endings. We drank our tea and talked about small things that held large feelings. The way snow changed the light in her kitchen, how Marlowe's breathing sounded different when he was truly content, whether wooden matches burned better than paper ones. Neither of us mentioned time passing or roads getting worse or husbands finishing conference calls in upstairs offices. We just existed in the space between midnight and morning, learning what it felt like to be honest about wanting things we couldn't have. At 1:30, Elena's phone buzzed with a text from Greg. Call running late. Don't wait up. She showed me the message and we both understood what it meant. More time, more stolen conversation, more careful exploration of the territory between friendship and something deeper. Do you want to stay? She asked. Until the road's clear? Do you want me to? Yes. It was that simple, that complicated. Elena showed me to the guest room this time. Real sheets and extra blankets and a window that looked out over the snow-covered neighborhood. Everything clean and careful, and exactly what someone would offer a friend who needed shelter from winter weather. Good night, Noah. Good night, Elena. But neither of us slept. I lay in the guest bed listening to the house settle around winter quiet. Elena moving around downstairs, straightening things that didn't need straightening. The soft whisper of pages turning. She was reading, probably curled in the chair by the living room window. Around 3 a.m., I heard her footsteps in the kitchen. Kettle whistle, the careful clink of spoon against ceramic. She was making more tea. I found her sitting at the island, wrapped in a thick robe, steam rising from a single cup. Couldn't sleep? I asked. Never can during storms. She gestured toward the other chair. Join me? I sat across from her in the space we'd claimed as ours. Outside, snow continued falling, erasing tire tracks and making the world look fresh and unwritten. Can I ask you something? She said. Sure. What do you want from this? From. She gestured between us. Whatever this is, I thought about how to answer honestly. I want to know what you look like when you're not being careful, I said finally. I want to hear what you sound like when you laugh without thinking about who's listening. I want to sit in your kitchen and drink tea and pretend we're just two people who found each other instead of two people who can't. Elena's eyes went soft. That's not a small thing to want. No, it's not. It's also not something I can give you. Not really. I know. We sat in comfortable silence, acknowledging the impossible mathematics of connection and circumstance. But we can have this, Elena said finally. Storm nights and borrowed time and conversations that exist in the margins. Is that enough? It has to be. She was right, but sitting across from her in the winter dark, watching snow fall past the windows, I understood why people made dangerous choices for insufficient reasons. Some beauty was worth existing on borrowed time. Dawn came gray and cold. The storm had passed, leaving everything white and quiet. Elena made coffee and scrambled eggs while I folded blankets and pretended we were just friends who'd weathered bad weather together. Roads should be clear by 9, I said, checking my phone. Good. But neither of us sounded like we thought clear roads were actually good news. We ate breakfast in companionable quiet. Elena asked about my mom's health. I asked about her teaching dreams. We talked around the weight of everything we couldn't say. At 8:47, Greg's car pulled into the driveway. Elena and I looked at each other across the kitchen island, and I saw something like panic flicker in her eyes. Upstairs, she said quietly. Guest bathroom. I'll tell him you're the handyman from October. Came back to check the generator connections after the storm. I grabbed my jacket and headed upstairs, hearing Greg's key in the front door as my footsteps disappeared into the hallway. From the guest bathroom, I listened to Elena greet her husband. Calm voice, no tremor. She told him about the power flickering and the handyman checking connections and how nice it was to have someone reliable for emergency calls. Greg's voice carried upstairs, tired from travel and overnight meetings. He asked about coffee and whether the generator had worked properly and when the handyman would finish up. Almost done, Elena called up. He just needs to check the upstairs outlets. A few minutes later, her footsteps approached the guest bathroom. Coast is clear, she whispered through the door. He's showering. I opened the door and found Elena standing in the hallway, still in her robe, hair mussed from the night. Thank you, I said quietly. For what? For New Year's Eve, for tea and conversation, and for what we can't finish saying? Yes. Elena stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her shampoo and see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. Noah? Yeah? Some doors stay cracked open, even when they can't swing wide. She reached up and touched my cheek just for a second, just long enough for me to feel the warmth of her palm and understand that some goodbyes were actually promises. Then she stepped back, and I walked downstairs and out the front door, carrying the memory of her touch like a secret I'd keep forever. January became February. Winter settled deep and cold, but no more storms brought late night orders for tea and lemons and matches. I worked regular shifts and took care of mom and tried not to drive past the turn that led to Elena's neighborhood. Tried not to think about snow falling past kitchen windows or the careful grace of hands cutting fresh lemons. But some memories were stronger than good intentions. Tom offered me the dispatcher promotion in March. Better pay, regular hours, a chance to build something stable and safe. I said yes because it was the smart choice. I said yes because Elena had taught me that mercy sometimes looked like knowing when to step back from things that could destroy everything good you'd built. But I kept her number saved in my phone, just in case the alerts ever looked dangerous again, just in case some storm needed more than one person could weather alone. And sometimes, driving home through ordinary weather under ordinary skies, I'd remember the taste of late night tea and the sound of Elena's voice saying my name in the dark. Some nights didn't ask for promises, they only left a light on. Some doors stay cracked,